Session of the City Council of the City of Fredericksburg. We will be led in opening prayer this evening by Councilor Matthew J. Kelly, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Please stand if you are able.
Most merciful Father, bring comfort to those in pain, peace to those in distress. Please bring our men and women in uniform, both home and abroad, safely home to their families. Help us to make decisions that benefit the entire Fredericksburg community. And of course, always remind us that we are here to serve and not be served. In your name we pray, amen.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Play ball.
Officer Worley, thank you for being with us this evening. We have two presentations tonight. We have a proclamation on the Red Ribbon Campaign. Is there someone here to receive this? I will come down and read it. Whereas alcohol and drug abuse in this nation have reached epidemic stages, and whereas it is imperative that visible, unified prevention education efforts by community members be launched to eliminate the demand for drugs, and whereas the Young Marines is a drug demand reduction program sponsored by the Marine Corps League. Membership is for children ages 8 to 18 or completion of high school. The Young Marines models their program after Marine Corps values, honor, courage, and commitment, by focusing on teaching youth to live a drug-free lifestyle and teach ideals such as leadership, teamwork, and discipline. And whereas the Lance Corporal Caleb John Powers Young Marines participate in and promote the National Red Ribbon Campaign, and whereas the National Red Ribbon Campaign offers citizens the opportunity to demonstrate their commitment to drug-free lifestyles, no use of illegal drugs, no illegal use of legal drugs, and whereas the National Red Ribbon Campaign will be celebrated in every community in America during Red Ribbon Week, October 23rd to 31st, and whereas business, government, parents, law enforcement, media, medical institutions, religious institutions, schools, senior citizens, service organizations, and youth will demonstrate their commitment to healthy, drug-free lifestyles by wearing and displaying red ribbons during this week-long campaign. Now, therefore, I, Mary Catherine Greenlaw, Mayor of the City of Fredericksburg, Virginia, on behalf of the City Council, encourage all citizens to participate in drug prevention education activities, not only during Red Ribbon Week, but all year long, making a visible statement that we are strongly committed to a drug-free city, and do hereby proclaim October 23rd to 31st, 2018, be designated as Red Ribbon Week 2018. We have participated in this exercise before. The Young Marines are a very active and force for good in this community. We have another proclamation for Women's Entrepreneurship Day Organization Incorporated, and I'd like to call on Dr. Ann Trung to come forward. And Ann, do you have anyone else you want to bring forward with you?
Yes, I'd like to call forward Quincy Young and my husband, Bao Trung, as well. Can they come up?
Whereas Fredericksburg has cultivated an entrepreneurial spirit that has helped us build one of the most diverse and forward-thinking cities in history. Women are a driving force in Fredericksburg growth and prosperity, and it is essential that we continue to promote their business and expand their access to resources. Whereas Women's Entrepreneurship Day Organization, Inc., We Do, a nonprofit organization founded by Wendy Diamond, is a worldwide movement to celebrate, empower, and support women in business with initiatives such as Women's Entrepreneurship Day and the International Digital Campaign, #ChooseWomen. Whereas the We Do mission is to empower the 4 billion women worldwide to be catalysts of change and uplift the over 250 million girls living in poverty around the world. Whereas we hope that prioritizing this effort will encourage even more women to innovate and create prosperous businesses worldwide. This work, however, must extend beyond today. Today, we are all pledging to support women-owned businesses and entrepreneurship. Whereas, when we empower our women and girls to innovate and start their own businesses, we open the door to better education, more opportunity, and the elimination of gender disparity. The potential for our city to continue flourishing rises exponentially when we nurture the success of our women. The city of Fredericksburg is proud to be part of this global movement to foster, celebrate, and support the continued accomplishment of women entrepreneurs. We have put gender equality at the center of our work to build a better Fredericksburg, and I am proud to stand here today to commemorate the amazing things our women and girls are achieving every day. Now, therefore, I, Mary Catherine Greenlaw, Mayor of the City of Fredericksburg, do hereby claim Monday, November 19th, 2018, in the City of Fredericksburg as a day in honor of Women's Entrepreneurship Day Organization, Incorporated.
Thank you very much. We are so grateful for Mayor Greenlaw and the City of Fredericksburg in supporting women in businesses. So to help us all, and not all women who are starting, also who are in business, to be recognized and to empower themselves to be better than they are. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have tonight two public hearings, 3 items, but 2 actual public hearings. Madam Clerk, will you please read item 5A?
Comprehensive Plan Amendment. The City of Fredericksburg proposes to amend Chapter 3, Transportation, Chapter 4, Public Facilities, and Chapter 11, Land Use Plan, to establish the vision for a public-private use stadium in Land Use Planning Area 1.
I'll call on Mr. Baruti, our city manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I did leave at your seat a roadmap for baseball multi-use stadium conversations. I just want to briefly go over this so that you understand what we hope for tonight and the public understands what we hope for tonight and over the next couple weeks. We do have 5 items on the agenda this evening. On the consent agenda, you'll see that CPACE ordinance related to financing is on this agenda. We also have a resolution setting CPACE program fees. And then, as the mayor referenced, 3 public hearings, 2 are combined. But they are, of course, the comprehensive plan amendment, the right-of-way vacation, and the special use permit. No action is expected this evening on any of those. On October 30th, we have called a special meeting. We'll start that evening at 7 p.m. Again, October 30th at 7 p.m. with a closed session. We also will have items to include the CPACE ordinance public hearing, and it's that night that we would hope for a first reading of that ordinance. Again, we'd also have the CPACE resolution program fees transmitted. Additionally, we would again transmit comprehensive plan amendment and the special use permit applications, and obviously expect a public comment. Folks are welcome and encouraged to weigh in on October 30th. On the city manager's agenda that evening, again, October 30th, we would also have the right-of-way vacation application and expect or hope for a first reading of that item. Also, we would transmit the development and shared use agreement for public review and city council review, again, on October 30th. And lastly, on October 30th, we would ask you to adopt a resolution extending the study period to November 15th. By that point, November 13th, the 120 days would have expired. So again, we would ask for consideration of extending the study period a bit beyond 120 days so that we would work to wrap up this matter by November 13th's meeting. November 15th gives us a couple days overlap. On November 13th, that is expected to have all of the items that we've just discussed, the CPACE ordinance for second read, the CPACE fees resolution, the comprehensive plan amendment, the right-of-way vacation second reading, special use permit, have an item titled authorization for the city manager to execute the POA commitment, that's the silver commitment, and an authorization for the city manager to execute the trademark license agreement, that is related to the concert series. And lastly, we would ask you to consider executing the development and shared use agreement. That's a definitive agreement we've been talking about since June. So, Madam Mayor, members of council, again, that's the roadmap. It's now before you. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions for Mr. Burdi? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Mr. Craig?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The item before the City Council this evening is one of three, and I'll just say it again. I think it's valuable. This is focused solely on 5A, which is the comprehensive plan amendment. We'll consider the special use permit and the vacation of the right-of-way, more specifically about the details of the stadium with the next item. But this is a comprehensive plan amendment to support a stadium in a new sub-planning area called 1H. The presentation that I'll give is in three parts. I'll go through the proposed changes by chapter, review the Planning Commission public hearing and recommendation, and give the final recommendation, which, as Mr. Brody said, is to open the public hearing this evening and hold action on this item until the November 13th meeting. Code of Virginia 15.2.2232 states the comprehensive plan controls the general location, character, and extent of public features. The current comprehensive plan calls for a minor league baseball stadium in Celebrate Virginia South, but it does not acknowledge the public support and the public use of the facility that's now proposed. The proposed stadium would be privately built and owned, with the city supporting the development through a long-term financial commitment. The stadium's primary use would be as the home of a minor league baseball team. The city would also use the stadium for community activities, concerts, high school, college, and amateur athletics, major events, tours, meetings with economic development prospects, and other uses consistent with the sound operation of a professional minor league venue. To reflect this, what you see on the screen is the first of the recommended changes to the comprehensive plan. It's to Chapter 4, Public Services, Public Facilities, and Preserved Open Spaces. Two modifications are proposed. One is to add the heading that you see to the chapter where the facility itself and the city's financial support and permitted use of the facility are delineated. And the second is to add an initiative on page 59 at the back of that chapter to include that. The second recommended change is to Chapter 3, Transportation Network. The proposed stadium necessitates changes to the transportation network in and around Celebrate Virginia South. There are 6 changes proposed. The purpose of these changes is to focus on the reconfiguration of the proposed road network in Celebrate Virginia South. And what you see on your screen now is the existing map in the comprehensive plan here. This is map 4 on page 35. This is the proposed map here. The primary change is number 1 here, which is the Rappahannock Toll Road, Parkway Toll Road, changing that configuration to an interchange, keeping the interchange, having the exit ramps tied directly into Gordon Shelton, have a collector street here, and also we've added number 15, a collector street here to fill out the network. That is generally in the area zoned R2 between the last Noble rezoning and the Central Park. So that would be a facility we're looking in the future to be included in the city's collector network to help absorb the traffic from a future interchange. The Rappahannock Parkway Toll Road is proposed to be removed from the plan as it's no longer part of the region's transportation planning. The third recommended change is to the future land use map in Chapter 10, Future Land Use Plan. It shows the completion of the Celebrate Virginia Road Network. So again, this map on your left is currently proposed, and then as exists in the comp plan now. The map on the right is what's currently proposed. The change is from this loop here to the modified loop that you see here. The proposed stadium is right here. The change in the orientation of the road is to accommodate the stadium location. One point I need to make here, this section dashed here, the city owns no right-of-way there. Just like here, the city owns no right-of-way here. So realigning the right-of-way, we have the same set of challenges in completing the road network. I wanted to make sure I pointed out that we aren't losing a potential connection across this property. We don't have it now. So that did not factor into the technical analysis about this change. The fourth recommended change is to Chapter 11, Land Use Planning Area 1. 6 changes are proposed. The purpose of these changes is to establish the new subplanning Area 1H. So again, we've got the existing map here. These red lines delineate special planning areas that have a little bit of extra context, a little bit of more fine-grained planning done in each. You can see on this proposed map here, we've added 1H. We've included the adjacent property here, the adjacent properties here, and in that area, there would be a public and private use stadium, supplemental ball fields for tournaments and training, and regional commercial uses, as well as a cohesive and interconnected network of collector roads that join Carl D. Silver Parkway, Gordon W. Shelton Boulevard, and a new interstate interchange. So we drew the boundary broad enough that we could encapsulate all of that into the new 1H planning area. The Planning Commission held 2 public hearings on this item, the first on September 12th and the second on September 26th. One member of the public spoke during the public hearings. They expressed support for the stadium and for utilizing shared parking in Celebrate Virginia South. The Planning Commission voted independently on the proposed changes by chapter. They did recommend approval of all 4. Our final recommendation this evening is to hold the public hearing and then take action on this being a resolution. It only takes 1 vote on November 13th. This is strictly about the comprehensive plan. We'll present more information, more detailed information about the project with the special use permit and the vacation of right-of-way. But I'm happy to take any questions on this section of the presentation now.
Any questions for Mr. Craig? Thank you, Mr. Craig. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to speak to the matter? If so, approach the podium, state your name and address, and you have 5 minutes. All right, then we will declare the public hearing closed.
Madam Mayor, I do have one question of Mr.
I'm
Craig.
sorry if I
No,
missed
no,
you.
that's my fault. I didn't.
Vice Mayor Withers?
The retail that will be in this special area 1H, is that similar to what would be there now, allowed in the comprehensive plan now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Thanks. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Any further questions from the council? All right, then we will declare the public hearing closed. This is before us tonight for action? No action. This is a public hearing. And it comes back on
November 13th, Madam Mayor.
November 13th. Thank you. I'll look at my road map here. I should have listened.
It's complicated.
There's more than one matter we have to deal with on this matter.
Madam Mayor, does the public hearing stay open until the 13th? No.
No,
Okay.
not for this. No. Now, there will be an opportunity to discuss any and all of these matters or speak to them at the special meeting on October 30th. I do want to make that clear to the public.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Okay. All righty. Madam Clerk, would you please read items 5B and 5C? We will take them together.
The City of Fredericksburg requests the vacation of a portion of the Carl D. Silver Parkway right-of-way between Haymarket Street, the northern entrance to the Expo Center, and the northern property line. Granting a special use permit to Celebrate Virginia South LLC, CVAS Property LLC, and CVAS Expo Center LLC for a stadium use.
All right, and now we'll call again on Mr. Craig, Senior Planner.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The 2 items we're discussing now are the special use permit for the stadium. as well as an ordinance vacating and realigning the existing vacant Carl D. Silver right-of-way running through the property. Excuse me. The presentation is in 5 parts. I'll go through the existing conditions of the site, the proposed use and potential impacts, go over the plan for extending Carl D. Silver Parkway, review the planning commissioner discussion, and give the recommendation on the project, which is to open the public hearing and hold action on these 2 items until either the 30th or the 13th as appropriate. One is an ordinance and takes 2 reads, the vacation ordinance, which would need to come back on the 30th. The second is a resolution, the special use permit, and that would be on the 13th. The stadium is proposed on 37.71 acres in Celebrate, Virginia South. So back to the map here. Get my pointer. Oops. That is the full area outlined with the cyan dashed line here. Celebrate Virginia South, a little bit of background on the development, was designed as a regional national tourist destination. The development is served by 2 major 6-lane roads. Let me point those out. So Gordon Shelton is 6 lanes. Carl D. Silver Parkway is also 6 lanes. The development has large available sites, large surface parking lots, including between Wegmans and the Expo Center, 16 acres of surface parking containing 1,611 parking spaces, so you can see it pretty clearly on the aerial. This is 10 acres of parking here, and this is 6 acres here, 830 spaces here, and that's 781 there. It also has heavy infrastructure designed for the purpose of these type of intensive uses. The property currently here contains the construction stockpile from the original construction of the Celebrate Virginia site, including the roads and the mass grade. They do operate a topsoil screening operation, filtering out that dirt and selling it by the truckload. Ancillary parking for the Expo Center here, so this portion of the parking right here. And also some conservation areas and environmental features right in this area here. And those were permitted and are covered and conserved through a master environmental permit that was obtained when the site was first developed. They took care of all the environmental features, protecting them up front. The proposed right-of-way to be vacated is roughly 2.13 acres. This is it here. It is vacant right-of-way. So the roadway stops here. This is the northernmost entrance to the Expo Center. This is the end of Carl D. Silver Parkway as we know it today. So the portion of the vacation would be in this orange area, and the realignment will show on another screen, but comes up and around here. The proposed stadium will seat approximately 5,000 people and will contain approximately 87,200 square feet of building area, covered party decks, and covered concourses. The applicant has submitted a general development plan with their project. It's very general. It contains the stadium location, which is shown in yellow, the right-of-way realignment, which is this area shown in green. This area is within the current right-of-way. You can see the current right-of-way here, and then the realignment goes off to the northwest there. It contains the details of a roadway section that will serve the stadium here, and we'll hit the details on that section to be built within the right-of-way on a later slide. It contains a sign location, this pink dot here, and that sign is permitted under the PDC zoning district to be 175 feet tall and 1,000 square feet in size. It contains a general parking area shown in pink to the west, and a tree protection area here. So this area is one of the protected environmental features they can't touch. This is an RPA, which is also protected. And then in technical conversations with the applicant, we had asked about their plan for visibility from the right-of-way, whether they were going to propose to clear cut and mass grade in order to offer some protection commitment to the city. They added a note to the GDP here saying that they would only grade and cut down trees for sign visibility and they would protect the rest. That was a good thing. Like the Hilton rezoning, this project proposes an intermediate master plan approved administratively prior to any subdivision or site plan being approved for the property. The master plan would contain an infrastructure component and a land use component. The infrastructure component would include a traffic impact analysis, just some background on what we expect, the level of improvement that may come out of that. We have 6-lane roads feeding the site. We're not concerned about capacity from a technical standpoint. It's what the roads were designed and built for. But they will check all of that. And in addition, maybe signal timing for peak hour traffic, whether or not we have to go into the system and modify how the lights operate there to get the traffic out quickly. Turn lanes, if there needs to be additional turn lanes. That's the level of improvement we expect to come out. That's why we feel comfortable with this at an administrative level. They will also do a utility availability analysis. They'll do a capacity analysis of the sanitary pump station serving the site. And just to point that out on the map as well, all the sewer goes back to this pump station here, which serves the Celebrate Virginia South development and then is pumped out of the development. They'll do a conceptual utility layout, a general stormwater treatment conceptual plan. All of that is, again, just master planning holistically the infrastructure on the site. The land use component would include a conceptual plan showing the approximate location of any lots, buildings, structures, the stadium itself, access points, and landscaping, as well as a parking analysis and their parking strategy. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. They're going to have to provide 1,250 parking spaces, either by building them or through one of the permitted alternative parking agreements through the ordinance, and we'll get into those details at a later slide. We looked at impacts of this project. There are two potential impacts that kind of rose to the top: light and noise. Starting with light, the stadium lights for the field itself will be 125 feet tall. That is permitted by our zoning ordinance for recreational stadium lighting. Some lighting standards would need modification, though, which can be done through our standard site plan exception process. For example, our ordinance limits lighting on a site to 3.0 foot candles, which is great for general commercial developments or residential areas. But minor league baseball requires the field to be lit to between 70 and 100 foot candles. So there's a conflict there. This is clearly a special instance, and our ordinance is set up to handle that. Secondly, around the entrances where a lot of the people are going to be, they may need to exceed 3.0 foot candles there as well for safety, for public safety. We're equipped to accommodate that. What's important, though, is that we have strict requirements at property lines, especially adjacent to residential uses. And there is an apartment complex planned here, under construction now. They have not, due to the way that the technology can direct and orient lighting, they are not asking for an exception to that rule. So they will be required to, and they will meet the lighting ordinance requirements as written at that line with the residential apartment complex. Talking about noise, the stadium will generally create 4 types of noise: crowd noise, stadium public address system noise, concerts with separate sound systems, and firework displays. Much of the public comment we received initially when the project first came out was about concerns over noise, and most of them came from the development here. This is Celebrate Virginia North at the top of the map that you see right here. We forwarded these comments to the applicant as part of the technical review process, and they presented a noise attenuation plan. The graphic that you see on the screen is from that plan, and I'll go through it. They've added this plan to the GDP as a condition, so it will be an enforceable element as the project moves through its design and operation. The stadium orientation is shown here. It'll be oriented so that the open portion, all the seating and bleachers will be here. The center field open portion will be here, so all noise will be directed towards the interstate, away from Central Park Townhomes and Riverwalk, away from the apartments here at Noble, away from the Seasons and Havens, and away from Celebrate Virginia South. So they will have to orient the stadium in that direction. The field will be sunk 15 foot below grade to contain the noise within the stadium itself. And they've also prescribed decibel limits at the property lines that will be, all of these have been added as conditions to the GDP. The next 3 screens will focus on the vacation and realignment of Carl D. Silver Parkway. Currently, Carl D. Silver Parkway ends at a T intersection with the northernmost entrance at the Expo Center, which is here, colored in yellow. The intersection will be converted to a single-lane roundabout with the construction of the Silver Collection apartments. So here, the Silver Collection, there's a single-lane roundabout contemplated with their development. However, the roundabout, if the stadium is approved and the project moves forward, the roundabout will become a double-lane roundabout, and that's the detail that's shown here at the top of the screen. Carl D. Silver Parkway will extend out of the roundabout within its current right-of-way, and that's shown in cyan here. As shown on this screen, in order to accommodate the stadium's location, This is the realignment. So you can see this green portion is actually within the realigned right-of-way. And then this pink line, the boundary of the property is about right there. That's where the right-of-way will terminate there. The city requested the vacation of the right-of-way under the condition that this new right-of-way be dedicated to the property line, and that's all so that we can have a future connection made. There are, just to state this again, there are 2 major 6-lane roads feeding the site. The connection is not necessary to support the stadium from a technical perspective now, but we do want to plan for the future, and it is the right type of improvement to finish out this development, and with the interstate interchange, having a second entrance would also open up commercial viability to that site. During the technical review of the application with the Planning Commission, the construction of the 4-lane Carl D. Silver extension through the site was discussed. So beyond the right-of-way, actually building this section that you see here. How far along are you going to build this road? The stadium developer will construct a 4-lane street section to the northernmost entrance to any parking required by the zoning ordinance. So if they build required parking over here, and there's an entrance here, they're going to build the 4-lane road to that point. That is a condition recommended for approval. Additionally, we had included condition 3 of the vacation ordinance and condition 4 of the special use permit, which contemplate the construction of the portions of Carl D. Silver Parkway that are not associated with the stadium project. So we asked the question of who's going to build the rest of it. The conditions were generated by the technical analysis of the project and were part of the presentation to and recommendation from the Planning Commission. So they acted on those and had the developer of any subsequent land here completing the 4-lane road to the property line, not going beyond the property line. The completion of this street beyond the stadium, it's a complex issue. It'll take time to work through in terms of design and the actual required infrastructure for the level of development, which we don't know. In order to focus on the stadium project, the draft vacation ordinance does not include condition 3, so work beyond the stadium has been taken out of the ordinance that was in your packet. And the draft stadium special use permit resolution does not include condition 4, and again, that relates to building beyond the stadium project. And that was done in order to provide an alternative approval for City Council's consideration in order to keep the critical path approvals for the stadium project itself on the sensitive timeline needed for the stadium moving forward. So do want to point out the difference between the Planning Commission recommendation and what is in the packet today. Finally, let's look at the functional design of Carl D. Silver that's proposed. The realigned right-of-way is proposed to be reduced from 100 foot to 80 foot. So the critical planning criteria in evaluating that at this level of detail is to ensure that the right-of-way is functionally sufficient, that it's safe, and that it provides multimodal access. The typical section is shown on this screen and would include a 10-foot shared use trail, 4 total travel lanes, a median, 5-foot utility strips, and a 5-foot sidewalk. So they check those boxes there. Discussion with the Planning Commission included 2 follow-up items. First was in regards to shared parking at the Expo Center. And we've added this chart in here to kind of help better illustrate the opportunity for shared parking that's there. The Expo Center has 830 parking spaces built on the site on that 10 acres of parking. By ordinance, it's only required to have 300 parking spaces. So our ordinance permits alternative parking agreements to be put in place to either share or use excess off-site parking, and that's an option that's available to them. They have to meet certain standards, and I want to be clear about that. In order to be able to take advantage of those parking spaces, they have to be within 1,500 feet from the entrance to the stadium. They have to have a pedestrian path, a clear pedestrian path, a sidewalk, and not cross major roads in order to be in play. And finally, for anything that's shared, they will have to submit a parking demand study, and that study will look at both uses. Some type of programming component will be required, or some kind of off-peak strategy, so that the 2 uses throughout the day have sufficient parking that they'll need, and they'll have to provide a study with that supporting that to take advantage of however much shared parking they want to use. If they can't achieve that, that's fine. They just have to build the additional parking. So even if they could take advantage of all the parking that exists there, they would still be required to build 420 parking spaces on the site. And the less they can share, the less off-site parking that they are able to fit within the locational criteria, the more they'll have to build on the site. The second question that we got from the Planning Commission, just to close the loop with you all on that, was about the interchange. What is its status? The city is working with the Fredericksburg Area Metropolitan Planning Organization to complete an interchange justification report. That's the technical study that would preclude any formal design of an interchange. So we're taking the first steps to get the interchange in place. The Planning Commission held 2 public hearings on these items, again on September 12th and 26th. We had one citizen speak at the public hearing, and it was the same comment in favor of the stadium and shared parking in Celebrate Virginia South. The Planning Commission discussed the structure of the city's participation in financing the stadium and the capacity of the streets and parking lots in Celebrate Virginia South. After discussion, the Planning Commission took 2 actions. First, they determined that the proposed right-of-way vacation complies with the comprehensive plan. That's a technical step that the Planning Commission, it's within the purview of the Planning Commission. Any public facility, they have to determine, no matter what our involvement in it, they have to determine that it complies with the comprehensive plan. And then secondly, they recommended approval of special use permit for the stadium. Both recommendations included the conditions that are listed in the staff report. The recommendation this evening is to open the public hearing and hold action on these items until the follow-up meetings on the 30th and 13th respectively, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Vice Mayor Withers.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Would you go back to the proposed road slide, please? I want to make sure that I understand this. So with the stadium, you're going to build the green section now, right?
Yes, sir.
And do we pay for that, or is that part of the project?
They pay for that.
Good.
Yes, sir.
That's a question that I'll get, so I want to make sure I know the answer to that.
Yes, sir.
And then, of course, as you said, the proposed section, we anticipate private funding for that, for whoever develops the rest of that site. I know they're going to have enough parking for this. I know these folks aren't going to build a $35 million stadium and not have a place to park people. But the shared parking, I can understand the 70 home games that they can plan for because they know when those dates are going to be. But how about the city gets, 183 days? That seems like to me it would be a little bit tougher to set up a schedule by, because I'm not sure, will we have that pre-planned schedule each year, or how does that work?
That's a good question, and what we'll have to do with the shared parking analysis is have them factor that in somehow to make sure that it's sufficient. I mean, there's a lot of parking out there.
Yeah, and again, I know these folks aren't going to build this stadium and not have a place for people to park. But I am concerned about when our 183 days come that we work that out too. So
Yes,
thank you, Mike, Mr. Craig, for all the work you've done and everybody's done on this stadium. It's quite a bit. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome. Councilor Graham.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Craig, can you go back to the slide with the detailed road plan?
Yes, sir.
There we go. Thank you. Is just really quick, is this supposed to be each side, or is this the full width of the entire right of way?
Yes, sir. That's the full width. So we'll go left to right. 1 foot offset from the side of the trail, 10-foot trail, 5-foot utility strip, room for curb and gutter, 11-foot travel lane, 11-foot travel lane, median, going in the other direction now, 11-foot travel lane, 11-foot travel lane, room for the curb and gutter, 5-foot utility strip, 5-foot sidewalk, and 1 foot to the edge of the right of way. That does not equal 80. It's less than 80. So there's some variability in there.
Okay. All right. Great. So then the asphalt trail is then expected to be both sidewalk and bike path.
The asphalt trail, will be on one side of the road.
Right. But because I assume the concrete sidewalks, just for the pedestrians, on foot, but then the asphalt trail that we would maybe, divide it to put, one side walking, one side biking, something along those lines.
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. And sorry, the next question to kind of piggyback off of Mr. Withers with the parking. Now, like Mr. Withers said, I can't imagine these folks building this, stadium and then not providing enough parking out of their own volition. Is there any I guess, any possibility that in discussions with the team, they've said that the parking requirements aren't necessary, that they might be able to get away with developing less parking?
I have not heard that. The applicant may want to respond to that question. I think the ordinance standard is pretty much in line with what their expectations were.
Okay.
I'm not sure if I answered your
No,
question.
it's great. I just want to make sure we're not building too much parking that's just going to sit there and not be used, and it could be a more productive use of our land.
That's a point well taken, and our ordinance does permit the alternative parking plans, shared parking, off-site parking for that purpose, and there's an opportunity here for that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Council Fry?
Thank you, Mayor Greenlaw. Mr. Craig, if you could go to the slide with the arrow of the sound direction.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. And I see the arrows going at an angle towards 95. How about, what's the sound projected to be going towards Bragg Hill or, quote, Central Park Townhomes?
Yeah, I'll let the applicant kind of talk through the technical aspects of that.
Okay.
And just, I'll do my best to kind of run down. There's an open area in the stadium design, and this is something we'll check with the building permits and everything that come in, towards center field.
Okay.
And that's where center field will go. They have decibel limits built in at the property lines, which should handle some, your typical stuff.
Right.
There would be fireworks and other things that, if you read in the staff report, they may have to get a permit for.
Gotcha.
But I'll let them talk about the technical part of that,
All right.
if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you very much.
Would the applicant like to respond to that at this time? I presume that's you, Mr. Kirk.
Yes, it is, I guess. Although we do have this evening Lonnie Weiss, who is Art's daughter and president of the team here. So I hope she'll have a chance to say hello. Just specifically your question, these minor league ballparks are used to being in downtown locations with residences around it. So we are designing this so that the sound at any property line of a residential property is no more than 70 decibels, which is the sound of a TV in your living room. And then by the time that sound gets to the actual residences, of course, it's even less than that. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, and thank you, Ms. West. Any other questions for Mr. Craig? All right, there is not expected to be any action on this tonight, but this is a public hearing. Would anyone like to speak to this matter, to either the vacation of a portion of the right-of-way or the special use permit as discussed by Mr. Craig? Yes, you may, certainly.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. My name is Lonnie Weiss. I'm the president of the Potomac Nationals, and I'm also part of the Silver family who own the Potomac Nationals. And I just wanted to thank you for having us, and we welcome any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Weiss, and thank you for being here. Did I see someone else stand up? Mm-hmm.
Harriet Rowe, 1238 Brent Street. I may need some clarification as to whether I can discuss these two subjects. You identified what two subjects we're acting on tonight, but Craig presented a comment on the landscaping to be used around the place to ameliorate any noise getting into the...
And that would be part of the special use request, so
thank
you may speak to that.
Okay. In Sunnyvale, Palo Alto area, they built a wall because the citizens didn't want the Expressway 85 feeding noise out into their neighborhoods. And so they came in droves to all of the city councils, and the city council said, we'll take care of it, and they did. They built the walls. Then the citizens came back and said the noise is worse with the walls than before they put the walls up. So they decided, after some expert conversations or consultations, that they would plant greenery and vines that grew on the walls, and that solved the problem. So when he talks about landscaping that will ameliorate the noise problem, I want to make sure that if any walls, fences, or what have you, that they are landscaped in such a way that the noise doesn't bounce off the walls. And the second item is decibels. There are decibel A's and decibel B's. The decibel A's are when you can hear the words and the melody of a song. Decibel B is when you're sitting in a line of traffic, somebody behind you, front of you, or beside you has a radio turned up and you don't hear anything except boom-bitty, 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 boom. That's decibel B's. So when they talk about measuring the decibels for those homes that are already built in that area, I hope they will consider decibel B's, because decibel A's may only be the same sound as a TV, but how about the decibel B's? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rowe. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Then, Councilor Kelly.
Just a point of information, as everybody knows, I-95 is about to go through some significant changes, new bridges, new everything, which is also going to include, in addition to anything that the team does for the stadium, is also going to include sound walls going down during the course of those improvements. So there will be another level of protection to just basically stop the much louder noise on Interstate 95 going through those close neighborhoods. Thank you.
All right. Any other comments or questions? Then we will declare this public hearing closed. This matter will not be acted on tonight. And again, I will repeat that there will be a meeting on October 30th and our next regularly scheduled council meeting on November 13th, where these matters will be voted on, actually. All right. We've now come to the portion of our meeting where we have comments from the public, comments from people who have signed up to speak before the meeting has begun. Please observe, to be fair to everyone, please observe the 5-minute time limit and yield the floor when the clerk of council indicates that your time has expired. We have two folks who have signed up to speak tonight. The first is Charlene Jackson Fields.
Good evening, Mayor Greenlaw and City Council members. My name is Charlene Jackson Fields, and I am the president of the Fredericksburg branch NAACP, representing more than 142 members. The information that I have to share with you tonight was previously submitted to you and to the mayor by letter dated September 24. That letter talks about the slave auction block, and it identified findings and recommendations from the NAACP. Those findings and recommendations were based on continued community input, based on increased awareness and interest in the slave auction block, based on the International Coalition of Sites of Conscience findings in Phase 1 report, based on discussions held at the September 11, 2018 meeting, and based on the ongoing involvement of the Slave Auction Block Committee. The following findings and recommendations are identified. Findings. Space is not adequate to tell the complete story of slavery and Afro-American history of Fredericksburg. Number 2, expansion at the present location may have a negative impact on local businesses. 3, leaving the slave auction block in the present location is polarizing. 4, based on the coalition's findings regarding slavery and segregation, Afro-Americans are rarely included in public history materials. Now, the recommendations are: the NAACP Slave Auction Block Position Statement, dated September 18, 2017, be reaffirmed. This report of the Slave Auction Block Committee be included in the Coalition's Phase 2 report. The Fredericksburg branch NAACP requests that the city reconsider its position and the NAACP's involvement, move the slave auction block to an appropriate location where the complete and authentic story of Afro-Americans can be told. I say this, share this with you this evening to make sure that this information is entered into the recordings and to make known of our continued desires. Thank you for listening, and most of all, thank you for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson Fields. Our next speaker is Judy Love.
Hello, I'm Judy Love. You want my address?
Yes, please.
2216 Caroline Street, number 214.
Thank you.
That's 9850. No, I'm sorry. I'm a little shaken up here, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I just moved here recently to that address.
That's all right. That's enough information.
I gave it to the lady at noon today, all right.
Okay.
I've only lived here 2 years. I came from the state of Washington, and I feel extremely passionate about that slave block. Every time I walk by it, it hurts me. And I always wondered how it must feel for a person of black ancestry to walk by that thing. And now I'm here tonight because I just want to say I was appalled to learn that from my granddaughter who's studying her ancestry that I actually had an ancestor who had slaves, and I feel bad about that. I didn't do it, but I feel bad about it. So because the slaves had absolutely no voice when they were being sold as property at that place, I want to encourage you all to please, please take into account the NAACP's statements and concerns with pay more attention to that than you do to the rest of us, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Love. Does any counselor wish to add anything to the council agenda? Councilor Fry?
Thank you, Mayor Greenlaw. I'll add an item. I'll call it African American history.
All right. Does anyone else wish to add anything to the council agenda? All right, then item 7A, Councilor Fry, African American history.
Thank you, Mayor Greenlaw. The title explains itself, African American history, and I want to say that since last year's decision and vote that we had last year here at council, council did agree to the process that's happening now, and the conversations, last year, the conversation has been going on for over a year, and I just want folks to know in the city that I'm very, very happy about the conversations that are going on. This is a city where folks can talk to each other, no matter what you believe or what your feelings are. And I have to say, we opened up the door last year to continue the conversation and the dialogue, and that's never happened here before, ever. Even at the last meeting, Mr. Holmes came. I spoke to what he told me that day, but just by folks, I would say, coming out the woodworks with stories. And I think a lot of people are learning a lot more about the city. And it took, I would say this, it took for this to happen for us to get to where we are today. And there's nothing wrong in trying anything. So I'm pleased about what's happening here in Fredericksburg today, because you're getting all kinds of stories. And a lot of people who were mute on speaking on anything, they're talking now. And a lot of folks have passed away and gone on. So it's for me to sit here, it's an honor to hear folks explain themselves, not here at council and everywhere. And I just want to say that these conversations are great for a lot of people. I'm telling that they're therapeutic. That these conversations are happening, and I know that African American history has been when the slave block topic comes up. A lot of people talk about African American history, and I feel like in a sense we're almost getting off track at the same time. So I just want to say that publicly, because when it comes to African American history, there's a history before that as well. So, and we're sitting in a spot to where Mr. Massey bought, I can't wait till everybody sees that information, where French John's Wharf off of Caroline Street, where, African American family had a business at Canal Street. Everybody know the canal goes to the water, who ran the ferry before we had a bridge here. So that's a lot of history that is really coming out. And even Mr. Massey and all the stories that are out here. I think as a city, no matter what the vote was a year ago, we still took a leadership stance on opening up the door for dialogue, because the council had to agree to hire a firm, and bring in folks from outside to have the dialogue or orchestrate the dialogue or take the minutes. All of that is happening right now. So for me to sit here, I said it at the last meeting when I was talking about Mr. Holmes, for me to sit here today and have the conversation and, sitting at a spot here in Fredericksburg where I rely on those stories from my grandmother. I spent a lot of time, and I said it at the last meeting, to where someone who didn't have a voice at all, hardworking folks, my grandparents and all of that. I mean, just for me to sit here generations after and know that we're having a dialogue that never happened before. And I can't wait as well till, even the stories about George Washington, the cherry tree, whatever you want to have, with these conversations that are actually in the history books. That's like a fictional story in a sense, in a history book. Let's take some of that and put some real history in it. And Fredericksburg has a lot of history that hasn't been told. And I think a lot of folks will agree that the quote unquote African American story hasn't been told, correctly. Even when the words like slavery have turned into servants or workers, or it's a lot of wordage that's going on. So as generations go on, the kids don't understand, wait a minute, are we talking about a slave or are we talking about a worker? It's like, so there's a difference there in the wordage. And I can't wait until, I don't know what the year would be, but when the story of Fredericksburg is extended, and maybe we'll have something in the history books, the real history books, that tells a little bit more. Maybe it's maybe it's the wharf, or maybe it's Canal Street, maybe it's the story of that. Maybe it's when folks are going over 95 and realize what was happening before those highways was in, how they were getting north. We hear all, and I'm sorry for rambling, but we hear all the stories about, I'm gonna say the word, educated slaves, or slaves whose owners allowed them to read or taught them to read. And these great stories that you hear about slavery. That's what I hear. I can speak for myself. But, such and such was a slave, but he was allowed to read, so he was a smart slave, and then he became successful. And that's just that's the concept that goes on. And when that story keeps revolving, that's what we end up with. And then today, probably our kids. I asked a kid the other day. I'm just throwing this out there. It was a kid the other day riding his bike Monday, and he had on these glasses. And I was out doing some yard work. He said, "Hey, Mr. Fry," I said, "Look at you." I said, "You got Malcolm X glasses on, with those frames. Everybody knows what those glasses look like." And he said, "Who is Malcolm X?" That says enough for me right there, And I went through the same school system, right here in Fredericksburg. So I'm just looking for what's going to happen in the future from what we're doing today. No matter what happens with this situation, I think we're at a point that we can really tell, a thorough story. And I think we're a small enough community where we can be dissected, and other folks around America can start telling their story and their truths as well. So sorry for the 5-minute rant. I need some water, but that's all I had on African American history.
Woman, you want the pink one? Pass it on. Thank you, Council Fry. I will remind people that as we speak, there is another series of community meetings being held tonight and tomorrow night at the library at 6:30 p.m. And the topic is, in fact, telling the whole story. That is so the next, Phase 3 community meetings are being held at the Fredericksburg Library, 6:30 tomorrow night and tonight. That was in the flyer that went out. At any rate, that's what's going on right now, and the purpose of this phrase is to collect as many stories as possible. And that's what's been amazing is how much history we know we absolutely do not have a good record of or a good presentation of.
The meeting at the library, what is that about? I didn't understand it. I'm sorry.
The Phase 3 on the ongoing slave law discussions are going on tonight and tomorrow night at the library, 6:30 p.m. The specific topic being telling the whole story, because what is coming out of this discussion is the fact that the story needs to be told. It's much bigger than that, and we need to do it in an appropriate way. So.
We were told that it was canceled.
Canceled?
By the coalition. We were told by Brayton and Dina that it was canceled. And
For tonight?
we wrote them back asking, when is it going to be?
Madam Mayor, if I could add, I'm not aware of that, and I'm sorry for that, but again, as the mayor suggested, we've got Dina in town tonight. Those meetings are probably wrapping up as we speak. But again, tomorrow, as the mayor said, that's round 1 of Phase 3. We have 2 other rounds planned for November 13th and November 14th, and a final round December 12th and 13th. They're all at 6:30 p.m., and they're all at the library.
They're all at the Fredericksburg Library in that meeting
6
room.
different meetings, all focused on Phase 3, so there's plenty of time for this community to weigh in significant ways. The mayor's right, it's about telling the whole story. The theme for November is creating reflection and connecting to the past, and in December, education and next steps are the themes. But each member of this community is welcome to all of those additional 5 meetings and are encouraged to attend. It was advertised in the Freelance Star. I'm sorry that not everybody's gotten word of that. It was in the Freelance Star today, on our website, and posted in the city manager's report. And obviously, we'll try harder to get the word out in a bigger, better way.
I don't know how to answer you, Gay, because that flabbergasts me. But at any rate,
I am really surprised. We received an email from Brady on October 18th.
On October 18th.
Saying that the city had requested to have more one-on-one dialogue to get information, that they didn't need us to host the events. We were not told anything about meetings at the library. I reread all the letters today. I'm very sorry, but
I'm very sorry too. You believe me, you're no sorrier than I am. That's a very surprising piece of it.
I talked with Marcy and Lori today.
Could we please have copies of those? That communication, if you don't mind? I would appreciate that if you don't mind. I know. I'm breaking all the rules here, but it's important. It's important. It's really important. I can't tell you how important it is. Okay, we will get together with you on that. Okay. All right. Thank you. Goodness. We are now at the consent agenda, item 8. The consent agenda is anyone who would like to pull an item from the consent agenda?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I'd like to pull item F, transmittal draft ordinance creating the program Clean Energy Improvements known as CPACE. This is something that we'll be voting on next month, and it was on the consent agenda, and I thought it would be a good idea to get some kind of staff report before we, I'm one, and I know you are too, Madam Mayor, that if there's questions, we don't like to vote that night, so if we can get the information out there tonight, and if somebody's got concerns, they can get them to us before we end up having to vote. So I'd like to get the city manager and the city attorney to go over some of the items in this section, if it's okay.
Sure. So we will,
Madam Mayor, I'll move the consent agenda, pulling item F.
thank you.
Second.
Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
And now we will consider the item 8F, which is a transmittal of a draft ordinance known as CPACE for creating a program for clean energy improvements. CPACE is a very interesting program, a very excellent program, and I think it's a good idea to make the details of that public tonight for everyone. So, Mr. Baruti?
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of council, I'd call on Bill Freeling, who's led the charge from city staff perspective, to highlight the assets of CPACE.
Thank you, Mr. Baruti and Madam Mayor, members of council. The Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy, or CPACE program, is an innovative way to finance clean energy and water efficiency projects on commercial, multifamily, and nonprofit buildings. This program, if enacted by City Council, could be used to help finance the multipurpose stadium, as well as future new construction and rehabilitation projects in Fredericksburg. CPACE loans can be used to finance renewable energy, energy efficiency, and water usage efficiency improvements to new construction or existing buildings. These include improvements such as solar facilities, Energy Star rated HVAC systems, LED lights, and WaterSense certified fixtures. The public benefits of the program include the environmental benefits of energy efficient and water usage efficient buildings, the incentive to renovate, retrofit, or rehabilitate historic buildings, the enhancement of the real property tax base, and the promotion of employment and economic growth in the city. The immediate proposed use of this program is for the multi-use stadium, but we can envision this program as being attractive to owners of older buildings in the city as well. If those buildings are upfitted with new, efficient HVAC systems, for example, they will enjoy a longer lifespan and they will be more attractive to commercial tenants. CPACE loans are designed to be long-term loans secured by a voluntary special assessment that has a priority status equal to a tax lien, thus senior to a mortgage lien. The program is only available if current lien holders consent to the voluntary special assessment. By setting up a CPACE program, a locality can enable private sector loans for 100% of total project costs by placing a special assessment lien on the property that the owner repays over time. The cost of the special assessment is intended to be offset by the savings on the borrower's utility bills due to the upfront investment in energy efficiency upgrades. So far, Arlington County is the only Virginia locality that has adopted a CPACE ordinance, although similar programs are in the works in both Loudoun and Fairfax counties. No CPACE loans have yet been made in Virginia, however, and with this ordinance, Fredericksburg has an opportunity to establish itself as a statewide leader in green energy initiatives. If enacted, my office would plan to promote the new program extensively to real estate developers and rehabilitators. And finally, myself or Ms. Dooley are happy to answer any questions, and we look forward to next week's public hearing on this matter.
Madam
Ms.
Mayor, I can
Yes.
offer a few additional comments. This ordinance, Mr. Vice Mayor, was drafted very carefully to protect the interests of city taxpayers. I would like to give some credit to Mr. Freeling and Ms. Freeman of Economic Development and Tourism Office. They have been looking at this CPACE program. My file goes back to February 2017, so we've been looking at this for a long time as an economic development tool here for the city. A couple of the aspects of this program are unique. Number one, we do anticipate that private lenders will be the capital providers for this program. The state statutory authority authorizes localities to appropriate public funds to make these loans, but we do not anticipate that that will be the course of action for the city. We do think private lenders will be the capital providers. CPACE loans are construction loans, and so they happen at a point in the development process where construction is imminent. We followed the underwriting guidelines that were proposed by the Virginia Department of Mines, Minerals, and Energy. The borrower is proposed to cover the costs of the program through a non-refundable application fee that will cover the city's costs. We'll be needing to review the loan document, title work. We'll be reviewing the underwriting guidelines for the loan itself and the building improvements to make sure that they qualify for CPACE financing. So there'll be a non-refundable application fee, and in addition, there'll be periodic fees that are made with each installment payment to cover the billing and collection costs. The treasurer's going to be handling the billing for the special assessment lien. She'll be handling the collection for the special assessment lien, and then remitting the payments as they come in to the private lenders. One feature of our ordinance is that when the treasurer receives payments under this program, if there are real property taxes that are delinquent on that parcel, any payments received go to pay real estate taxes first and the private lender second. And finally, we've also taken advantage of an option under state code to make a 1-year time period for any delinquencies. So if a real estate tax becomes delinquent on property, we have to wait 2 years from the due date before we can file a foreclosure action. But state code allows us to use a 1-year time period for these special assessment liens, and we propose to use that 1-year period in our ordinance. Obviously, the sooner you're able to collect a delinquency, the less delinquency or the lower amount of money that you're chasing. So we think that the ordinance is well positioned in order to protect the city's interest and still serve the public interest in making sure that these loans are available to new construction and existing structures.
Councilor Devine.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess a question for Mr. Freeling. You said, or if I'm on the website and I've looked at it a little bit, Arlington has passed it. It looks like Loudoun's considering it. And then it looks like Illinois, New York, and Pennsylvania are kind of getting on board as well. Is there a project currently that you could point to that has been undertaken? I'm just curious to see how it's working.
Yes, PACE is actually used frequently all over the country. Virginia just has been, I guess, slow to enact it, any Virginia localities. But for example, the Audi Field, the new DC United Stadium, used PACE, and that was kind of how it crossed our radar screens. And we began looking into it. But yes, it's frequently used throughout the country.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions for Mr. Vreeling or City Attorney, Madam Dooley? Madam City Attorney, Ms. Dooley? Well, this is truly an extraordinary program. I heard of it first when we were having discussions, and I commend Mr. Vreeling for finding it and making it available for this project, because it's a very good source of financing in many ways. So thank
I'll move
you.
item 8F.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Madam Clerk, do you have the motion? Are we voting on this tonight, and we just
No,
we're
it's just for the
transmitting?
transmittal to finish
We're
out the
just
consent
doing
agenda.
Simply
the-
accepting
Yeah, we're doing
the
the transmittal. We're just voting on the transmittal. Okay. Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okey-dokey. We have before us 4 sets of minutes. A work session of October 9th, public hearing on the 9th, regular session on the 9th, and the council retreat minutes from the October 12th and 13th. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes?
Madam Mayor, I move the minutes as submitted.
Motion's been made and seconded. Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
We have an applicant to be appointed to the Parking Advisory Committee, Mr. James Tankersley. What's the will of the council? Councilor Duffy?
Mayor, I move approval of Mr. James Matt Tankersley to the Parking Advisory Committee.
Second.
Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Item 11A is on the city manager's agenda. I'll call on Mr. Craig.
It's on.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This item is a text amendment permitting, defining, and regulating data centers in the city of Fredericksburg. This was a first read item at your meeting on October 9th, at which it was approved on first read. The question put to us was, is it possible to change the minimum parking requirement proposed to a maximum parking requirement proposed? So we looked into that. And what we found is that just by simply making it a maximum, it is feasible. We met with Fredericksburg Regional Alliance, their representative who's working with data center groups, and they said that actually works better. They think they don't need as much parking as one would assume. So that does work from an economic development standpoint, from a planning standpoint. We did want to make sure we checked and made sure that there were no negative impacts. So we included some additional information about where these uses could go by right to ensure that if we did permit less parking with this use, that they couldn't change out to a restaurant. It's only permitted by right in I-2. Out of the 16 industrial uses, we kind of broke down what could happen if one changed use. 9 uses require less, so it wouldn't be an issue there. 4 are so unique, like a slaughterhouse, that they're defined case by case. We didn't even attempt to define required parking limit. One of the remaining uses requires a special use permit, which we could check for at that time. The 2 other uses would be research and development and equipment rental and sales. So they would be permitted to change if a data center was developed. And then all data centers outside of that I-2 require special use permits, so we could consider parking at that time. So we felt good that the impacts would be mitigated, that there was minimal risk with making it a maximum parking requirement. We did include that ordinance in your packet, which may be approved on second read.
Madam Mayor, I move for approval on second read with the amendments.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded. Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Item 11B is an ordinance also up for second read. Ms. Jett, our budget manager.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. We're here for the second read of the 2018A bond ordinance. Public hearing was held on October 9th. No members of the public came forth to speak. Council approved the ordinance 6-1 with Mr. Kelly voting against, stating that he objected to the inclusion of Executive Plaza and Riverfront Park, but not necessarily the proposed bond issuance. Staff recommends approval of the ordinance on second read.
Any questions, Councilor Duffy?
I was going to
Go ahead.
like to make a motion approving on second read, providing for issuance and sale of general obligation bonds of the city of Fredericksburg, Virginia, in an amount not to exceed $17 million in the form, details, and payment thereof.
Second.
Councilor Kelly?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wasn't planning on saying anything, but I wanted to clarify, I was not opposing the Riverfront Park. I was opposing a portion of the Riverfront Park, creating a meadow which limited access to the river, limited use, and created a maintenance headache, but not opposed to the park. Thank you.
My apologies.
Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 6-1. Kelly voting against.
I'll call on the city manager for his update.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will again highlight, I know we just covered this, but again highlight for the public that we do have a series of 5 more after tonight, 5 more conversations with the International Coalitions of Sites of Conscience. Again, those dates are tomorrow evening, the 24th at 6:30 p.m. at Fredericksburg Library, November 13th and 14th, and December 12th and 13th, all again at 6:30 at the Fredericksburg Library. Please come and participate in that continued dialogue. Also, commend the Arts Commission, who launched 3 years ago the city's public sculpture program. Now in their third year, the city has successfully issued a call for artists, and they have selected again 6 new sculptures. So you'll see those pop up in the city, throughout the city in the next month or so. Actually, some of them are already in place. Do appreciate their efforts and the cooperation of the Parks Department for making that happen. Also quickly highlight, staying on arts, that the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts will launch the Artmobile exhibit in Fredericksburg. This is after a 65-year hiatus, I understand, from the city of Fredericksburg. They will be back, and the governor will help sort of launch that program. They'll be here on October 30th, and the public is welcome to participate in that program at Hurcam Park on Friday, November 2nd from 7 to 9 p.m. This will have an effect on Prince Edward Street. I'll just highlight that. Prince Edward Street will be closed for that week to accommodate this public Artmobile. So please come and participate and enjoy the art in the city. Lastly, I'll just commend Lieutenant Josh Lynch for his participation with his K-9 Lex. They were at the grand opening events for the National Law Enforcement Museum in Washington. Again, I commend him for his efforts and participation in that national event. With that, Madam Mayor, the calendar is before you, and I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
Any questions for Mr. Baruti? All right, if there's nothing more to be brought before this body, we are adjourned.